A lumber cart is one of those things every woodworker needs. It's where we dump all those cut-offs and scraps, and still somehow expect to find what we're looking for later. It's a cart just like the one right behind me, but this cart is not the one I will be building in this video. It is, however, the very reason why I'm building this new lumber cart. If you've been watching my channel since the early days, you might recognize it. It was one of my first ever projects. Back then I had very little experience, so I obviously made many mistakes with my design. And even if you don't intend to build a lumber cart exactly like mine, you will still learn what to avoid and what to think about by not making the mistakes I made. If you want to build a lumber cart like the one I'm about to build, then you can find a link to the build plan down in the description. My first mistake was to give it a cool design without thinking about what practical problems it would bring. I did not like how square and boring it would be, so I cut all the top pieces at an angle to give it a bit more originality. Well, don't do that. When the cart is shaking from moving it around, the boards that are leaning against the slope wall would slowly travel towards the bottom of the slope and ultimately fall out of the cart. Stylish? Maybe. Functional? No way. My second mistake made my first mistake even worse, and it was to use small casters. The caster I used were only 2-inch casters, so they made my cart shake a lot from the tiniest bump. The more it shook, the more wood scraps fell out. Don't use small casters. Just don't. The third mistake we can find here on the back of the cart, where all the large sheets are stored. This tiny wall was meant to neatly help line up the sheets and give support to this stop wall. But what I did not think of was that now I could only pull out the sheets in one direction. Removing this wall improves the usefulness of the cart, and it opened up more options on how to access the lumber. And mistake number 4, I didn't stop to ask the most important question. What was I actually going to store in this thing? Boards? Sheets? Turns out I mostly work with plywood. And these compartments, way too narrow. Great for 2x4s, useless for sheet scraps. Alright, so let's take a look at how I fixed all my problems. First, no more dramatic angles. I kept a couple of 45-degree cuts just for looks, but nothing that messes with gravity. And to really stop things from falling out, I added these rubber cords. They are super easy to pop on and off. If you're building yours for boards, you might want to skip the angles entirely, but for plywood, this setup works great. The casters were an easy fix. This time I chose 4-inch casters, twice as large as the old ones. The tiny support wall on the back is gone. And to secure the stop wall, I simply made the base thicker and mounted it on the side of the cart. You can also see that there is more stuff going on here, but I will come to that soon. Regarding the compartment layout, I decided to make one wide and one tall, and then 2 smaller compartments for small things. This way I can store both long, narrow sheets and medium-sized square sheets. For even larger sheets, I still had the back of the cart I can use. Speaking of the back, let's talk about this new section. But before that, let's have a quick look at the old design again to understand why I added this new section. When large sheets are leaning against the wall, they create this gap that becomes dead space. If I were to store small scraps here, then it would be a nightmare to access. And for that matter, to even see. My solution to this was to add another slope wall, and between those 2 walls I added shelves, where I can store boards or other long narrow objects like pipes and whatnots. This design is brilliant. It removes dead space, adds a natural leaning wall for larger sheets, and makes it possible to also store board scraps. Yes, brilliant! And yeah, I added more rubber cords for the big sheets. Same idea, easy to remove, but they keep everything locked in place. I hope you find my mistake and solutions useful in some way. And now, here is how I built this new improved lumber cart. Let's take a quick look at this rubber cord and how we assemble it. It's actually surprisingly easy to do, and it's very flexible to change the length of it. When I got this package, it looked like this. It was just a bunch of rubber cords and all these hooks and some kind of short pipes. To make one of these cords, all we need is a rubber cord like that and 2 hooks and 2 pipe thingies. We start by doing a clean cut at one of the ends, so it's not frayed or anything like that. And then we take one of these pipes and thread it over the cord. Then we take one of these hooks and we push it all the way in. If it gets stuck midway, you're doing it wrong. You need to push it all the way in, like that. And then we take this pipe and just push it straight over here, like that. And there we go. That's all we need to do to make it stick. As you can see, it's very, very sturdy. And to remove it, we can give this a little bit twist and pull it back. There it comes loose. And then we can just change the length of it if we so want to. Alright, so let's see how we do the whole thing now. Give this a clean cut. Thread over the pipe. Take the hook, just make sure it's all the way into the bottom. Take the pipe and just push it over there. Now it's locked in place. Then we decide how long we want this to be. In this case, we're just using a small cutoff. This is bad, so let's clean this up. The small pipe first, then the hook. We push the pipe over the hook. And there we go. A really tiny small rubber cord.